Welcome to Skin Deep here on Sirius XM Radio, channel 141 HUR Voices. I'm your host, Sharrarne Morton, and I have two phenomenal leaders on the show with me today. They are Farida Yahya. She's a social entrepreneur, and she's passionate about empowering local communities, especially women and youth. She works with the American Institute for International Policymakers and Public Administrators, where she helps develop nations. Okay, do you hear me? Particularly places like in sub Saharan Africa. She provides expert training and consulting to governments and organizations. And as the county director and chief of party for the West African division, Farida is responsible for leading operations for the region. Among many other things, she is a 2021 Nelson Mandela Washington Fellow and a two-time TEDx speaker. She's a published author of two books as well. And guess what else I have? Diana Amabelle Nwakanma. She's an international development strategist, a coach, and systems architect. She is shaping the future of youth. Both her and Farida are. She's all about gender equity and innovation across Africa. And with over 15 years of experience across four continents, folks, spanning social development and human services, Amabelle has designed and led impact driven initiatives in partnership with key tri sector stakeholders. Listen, I want to know, when do these ladies ever get any sleep? Because Amabelle currently serves as Director of Programs and Partnerships at LEAP Africa, where she leads a multi-million-dollar portfolio of regional and Pan-African initiatives across 30 African countries. I don't know how they do it, but they do it and they are here. So, as I always say, we're going to be doing more than just scratching the surface here on Skin Deep. We're talking all about young African leaders who are, in fact, the future of not just Africa, but the entire world. And by the way, if you want to reach out, always email us at skindeepradioshow@gmail.com. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after these messages with information you just can't afford to miss here on Skin Deep. Welcome back to Skin Deep here on Sirius XM Radio, channel 141 HUR Voices. As I mentioned before the break, I have Farida Yahya and Amabelle Nwakanma. And she's going to get on me too, because I hope I am pronouncing her name correctly. As I mentioned, they are the future of Africa, and that they lead operations for entire regions of Africa, concentrating on social development, human services, youth and gender equity, and so much more. Welcome, ladies, to the show. Glad to have you here.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much,
Sharon.
Sharon. It's a pleasure to be here.
I hope I
Pleasure
did
to
you
be here.
justice. I know I left out, I want to tell my listeners, I left out a ton of information. These ladies do even more than I mentioned. We just have a short show, so we had to cut it short. But ladies, take us back for a moment and explain to our listeners, what exactly is it that you do and what sparked your passion for this work?
Amazing. Thank you so much, Sharon. I mean, again, an honor to be on this. It's been really exciting, since I connected with you last year. I know that I've been inspired by what you do, and I'm excited to be able to share, my story with your listeners as well. So for me, I think it started way back in, high school. I grew up in a very conservative society, and it was very clear to me that the voices of women were easily not represented in certain spaces. And I really wanted to be able to have my own voice being heard, but also over time realized that I needed to carry the voice of so many others as well, like myself, who did not have the opportunity to be in certain spaces. I started first of all being, a volunteer for a lot of organizations, most of them national and international. And then after building up my skill as a volunteer, I decided to start my own beauty company fresh out of school, fresh out of college, as we'll say here, but for us, it was university. And running my own beauty business for over 10 years made me realize that there were a lot more other sectors that we need to do more on. And that led me to actually start going into the development space and supporting other women to be able to bring their visions to life. Working with the American Institute has been really empowering for me because it's giving me the opportunity to be able to, just like you said, advise public sector and private sector leaders on how best to be able to trade, but also how to look at investment as a long-term partnership. Because again, when we look at Africa, I say this for a fact that if you're not doing business in Africa at this time, you're actually 10 years behind, if not more.
Wow.
Africa is the future. We have the youngest continent. There's a lot of vibrance. We're truly blessed, both naturally and otherwise, in people and also in resources on the ground and over the ground. So it's time for us to be able to see that Africans become the architects of their future and not the other way around. This is why I do what I do. And that is why, Amabel and I have been on this mission to be able to enlighten more partners and people, especially, people like yourself or other people who are doing amazing work here in the DMV area. So I'll allow Amabel to talk about her own work.
Yeah, I was going to ask Amabelle, tell us what sparked your passion. When did you realize that this was bigger than just a job for you?
Yes, thank you so much, Ron. And I'll echo what Farida said. It's such a pleasure to be here, and you are such an inspiration yourself. So thank you. I'm so excited to be talking to you about this work. One of the things that I would say I'm privileged to be able to be both a Nigerian, an African, a Canadian. I was born in Kenya, also Nigerian as well. And my life has allowed me to straddle two worlds, a world where things, one would say that it's a little bit more structured, a little bit better rule of law, and a context where there's a lot of disenfranchisement, a lot of disempowerment. And one of the things that has stood out for me as a thread is it's just people should not be penalized for the lottery of their birth. They didn't choose to be born in a particular place versus another. But just by that lottery, a lot of opportunities are missed, a lot of exclusion happens. For a continent that has, like Farida said, the youngest continent, a continent in which the whole world really is hinging upon to solve the problems, the wicked problems that the world faces. We talk about them being the future, even the present. How can we, on the backside of that knowledge and truth, also have that same segment of population be some of the most disempowered, some of the most constrained and limited when it comes to them being able to actualize and be who they need to be so that the world can move forward and so that we can get some sort of hope for the future. Because otherwise, I would say sometimes when I think about the alternative, it feels very dystopian. So for me, the young people of Africa, the young women, the young men, they need to be supported, to be resourced, to be empowered, to be enabled, to be upskilled, to be reskilled. And barring that, I think that it's quite scary what the outcome could be for the world we live in. And these are the things that keep me up at night. And these are the things that actually fuel me and ignite me to keep going, even when it gets discouraging. So that's really why I do what I do.
That's wonderful. I love that. Listen, ladies, I have quite a few questions for you, and we don't have a lot of time. So I want to ask you to condense your answers so that my listeners can get as much information from you as possible. But before we move forward, I would like for you to let my listeners know how they can get more information, or what's your social media handle so that they can see what you do. Farida, you want to let my listeners know really quickly, and then you, Amabelle.
Oh yeah. So you can easily find me on LinkedIn with my full name, Farida Yahya, which is spelled Farida. The surname is Yahya. So yeah, that's my most active social media at the time.
Great. And you,
Yeah.
Amabelle?
And same for me, LinkedIn, Diana Amabelle Nwakanma, funny last name, Nwakanma. And of course, you can also check our website, Leap Africa, www.leapafrica.org. And yeah, you'll find all the work that I do and more about me there. Thank
And
you.
that's leap, Leap, Africa.org. Wonderful.
Correct.
So you are both very deeply invested in gender equity. What does that look like on the ground beyond the buzzwords and, what sounds great? That has to be some work that's very challenging, because we know a lot of parts of the world, and now even here in America, a lot of people don't believe in gender equity. So what does that look like for you? Either of you can take that answer, or that question, I should say.
I can start. I don't mind
Um,
starting. I'm very passionate. I always say that I feel if I'm called to anything in this world, it's called to empowering women and girls. And why is because I've seen what an empowered young girl who is from a background in which everything is working against her, what she can do, and the multiplier effect that she has when she's empowered. And of course, in a context like Africa, where you find that there are very heavy patriarchal systems, it's much more important and imperative to ensure that those barriers are removed one young girl at a time in education, in entrepreneurship, in employability, in active citizenship and leadership, as well as in their health and well being. And I think once you start to really invest heavily in them, the multiplier amplified effect is amazing to see.
yeah,
So I'll stop there just to condense my response, but that's why it's very important for me.
yes, and it's
Yeah,
amazing for the world to see too, and what an amazing impact these young girls make because of what
Exactly.
you all are doing on the ground, because of gender equity. Go ahead, Farida.
yeah, I just wanted to echo what Amabel has said. And I think for me, the biggest thing that I've found, the fight is actually in the mind. Unfortunately, because you have decades, centuries of a patriarchal system, unfortunately, the girls growing up now believe that they don't actually even deserve the equity you're trying to give them. Sometimes the pushback comes from the girls and the women because they feel like the men should still be the ones to lead or tell them what to do and how to be able to shape their life. So in my work, I've found that getting the women to even understand and have the awareness that they actually deserve that equity, that their voice is, just as valuable as the men in the room, that has always been the challenge for us.
Mhm.
But thankfully, we're actually finding a lot of safe spaces where women are leading the conversations. And now girls can see that it is possible to dream and they can do just as much or even more. And I think for me, that has been the most fulfilling part of the work that I do, is
Absolutely.
that just by being your own self, just by lighting your own light and your own fire, you inevitably become a mentor and an inspiration to other young girls to do even much more than you have done.
Yes, agreed.
Absolutely.
Either of you can answer this question. Can you share an example of a creative or bold solution that you've used to solve a real community challenge? And that's in any parts of the work that you do.
Amabel, do you want to take that?
Yes, sure. So I will mention like it's quite a number of different things. So Leap Africa, one of our models for what we do when we do our leadership development or empowerment programs, we wanted to culminate into an active what we call change project. So the young people, the young women who identify a solution in their community. So one of the main my heartwarming project is called a Leadership Accelerator Program for young African women, and at the end of the the learning and the training, they're able to identify something that they want to do to transform their community. And we've had so many different types of things. We've had women who have identified waste peels from oranges that are thrown away, but they find there's something in there that can prevent malaria, and they've created a solution to be able to heal in IDP camps to heal the to reduce the incidence of malaria in those camps because of the different illnesses that was coming up. We've had people that have provided water in areas where there was no water, or even upcycling of waste that are in communities. As we had a young lady that created a bridge that was preventing children from getting to school, so they now have an access to get to school. Whereas before, there was literally they were broken apart. There was no way for them to get across. So
Yeah,
just a few of the things that have
yeah,
happened, and I could go on and on, but really
yeah.
amazing things that women are able to do when they're empowered and they're ignited.
Yes, that's so great. Listen, we have to take a quick break, folks. I want you to stay tuned. We'll be right back after these messages here on SiriusXM Radio. And we're back here on Skin Deep on SiriusXM Radio with two powerful leaders of Africa, Farida Yahya and Amabelle Wakama. So, ladies, during the break, I had mentioned to you a question that I want you to answer, and I think Amabelle, I think you said you were going to answer it, but I wanted you to like explain how. Well, I should say many of our listeners are very curious, as am I, about the balance between tradition and progress. So, how do you navigate cultural expectations while pushing for change? That's like walking a fine line, a thin line, I think. But tell me what you do and
Yeah.
how you do it, Amabelle.
Yeah. And that's such a great question. And it comes up so often, so often. One of the things I say, the first thing I always say when I'm asked this question is, tradition was not, um, man was not made for tradition. Tradition was made for man.
Hmm.
So we cannot be beholden to tradition at the expense of people. Ultimately, we're centering people, and people are the drivers of progress. You don't have progress outside of people. When you talk about people, the community progressing, children progressing, the society is progressing, the conduit is usually people.
Hmm.
So when we think about progress, one of my go-to strategies is consensus building. I think sometimes the way things are approached is where you lose consensus and you lose buy-in.
Mm.
Sometimes it can be antagonistic, sometimes it can be just, almost like an all-out war.
Yeah.
And the focus for me and on behalf of Leap Africa, for example, is always, what are we trying to achieve together? What is the outcome you want to achieve? The positive win-win outcome. And that is usually the North Star that allows us to say, let's
Mm.
focus on this. And I believe you have to have data. You can't
Yeah.
come and say, this is wrong. Oh, don't do this anymore. Why? This is the way I know. But
Yeah.
if you have new information that's evidence backed, and you're able to bring it forward respectfully, respecting the tradition, respecting the belief systems, then
Hmm.
I found that it moves the needle. Sometimes a bit slowly, but it does move the needle. And I've found that sometimes the antagonists actually become allies, and that's the most beautiful thing to see. So it's a marathon, not a sprint, but it is possible with certain ways that you do it and approaches that you take.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I like that. The data, of course, gives you credibility and helps, like you said,
Hmm.
move that needle along. When it comes to human services, like where are the biggest gaps that you're seeing, and who needs to be paying more attention? Farida
I
or Amabelle, either one.
Frida, maybe you want to start, then I'll if there's anything to say, I'll jump on.
Okay. So you said when it comes to human services, right? What are the biggest gaps?
Yeah, and who
Mhm.
needs to be paying more attention to those gaps? Like you all are paying lots of attention, but you need partners and others to help. So, yeah, tell
Mm.
our listeners about that.
Yeah, so I think for me, from the work that I do, one of the things that I've seen is that a lot of times people always like a point of influence or a center of influence to be able to support, um, to get them to see that it's possible to overcome that challenge that they have, especially around trying to do things new, right? Trying to innovate or do something new that
Mhm.
has not been done before. I think that's really important. When it comes to people who should be paying attention, I think we need everyone on the table, but we need everyone doing their part, not necessarily trying to do what other people are doing. I find a lot of times that people are repeating what the other person is doing. So I'll give an example. When you're trying to make changes, you need people, policymakers on the table because they would push the conversation around how to be able to protect those human services and those new changes that you're trying to bring so that the law covers the people who are trying to do those changes. You also need the people who are going to lobby and push the early adapters that are going to make sure that this is actually done right and this is actually being accepted by the community. And then you would need the people who traditionally are centers of influence that people listen to, the traditional rulers, the religious leaders in the community. You need people to be able to You need their buy-in so that you can have that change happen. And then
Mhm.
you have the people who you are doing those changes for, or you're trying to create those solutions for, to be able to see themselves, not just to be inspired, but also to own those solutions, right? So everybody needs to play their part, but you need to make sure that nobody is repeating what the other person is doing, because sometimes, a lot of times I've seen this happen. Everybody focuses on the policy or on on how it's changing and this and that, and there's so much gap in the middle, and nobody is filling that gap. I
Yeah,
think that's for me what
Absolutely.
I find to be, very unique, and something that we need to pay attention to.
yeah.
Amabel?
Amabelle.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. There's something that I call the continuum of stakeholders. Everybody cannot be at the same one end or this end. There is a place for everyone to be, and it has to be complementary in terms of how we come together. And the gaps that I find is just the siloed ways of doing things. And we'll talk about the globalized world. One of the things that Frida and I are really trying to do, which you're facilitating even by just having this radio interview, Sharon, is how do we even start to link the key stakeholders from the global north and the global south, from the African diaspora, African Americans, African Europeans, to the continent where so much of the need and so much of the resources exactly like they lie? And how do we start to leverage the connections, the relationships to leverage the resources most optimally? So those
Mhm.
are some of the things that I think really need to be addressed.
Yeah, agreed. So, listen, ladies, we only have a couple more minutes, but I want you to tell our listeners, when you look ahead 10 years from now, what kind of Africa are you working toward? And what is it our listeners can do to be a part of that vision?
Amabel?
Thank you, Farida. Honestly, the young people that I meet across the continent, and I would love to host you, Sharon, on the continent one of these days. They're so inspiring. You cannot leave a group of young women, young people in Africa. You can't leave them uninspired.
Yeah,
Just the vibrancy, the creativity, the energy, the entrepreneurial spirit that they have, the drive, the hustling mentality. And when you see them and you know the difference between where they are now and what the future will become, the great, beautiful, developed future that we are looking for, it's just supports St. Greece, links, enablement, empowerment. You'll see that you have a role to play. All of us can come together to support, to provide those linkages, to provide technical support, information, mentorship, facilitate one way or the other to
yeah,
get them from this point A to that place that will make the world what we want the world to be. And again, I'll always say this is what I'll end with. There is no alternative. The alternative is a dystopia that I don't even want to think about. And
yeah,
so this is what really makes me optimistic is that they're there, they're ready. They just need that push and ignition from
yeah,
us.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Well
Um,
said. Farida,
yeah.
you have like 30 seconds.
Oh my. So
And
I think the future I see is a future where we have dreamers and doers working side by side,
Mhm.
to build a world where no one is left behind, and where everyone feels like their voice is honored, appreciated, and valued. There's a lot of system that's working on this side. We have a lot of knowledge and experience. On the other side, we have dream, passion, and drive. We need to connect the two. Everyone has a role to play.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely.
beautiful.
Well, folks, that's it for now. This has been an amazing, phenomenal conversation. We have to bring Farida and Amabelle back because there's so much more information, so many more questions I wanted to ask because they're doing so much work. But I'm your host, Sharrarne Morton, with two phenomenal leaders of Africa. Ladies, again, tell everyone how they can reach out to you or find out more about what you do. I know you're on LinkedIn. Give them your LinkedIn handles again.
Amazing. So my LinkedIn is Farida Yahya, spelled Farida, and my surname is Yahya. Yeah.
Yes. And Diana Amabelle Wakama, Nwakanma, also LinkedIn. And you can also check us out at Leap Africa, www.leapafrica.org. Thank you so much, Sharon.
Yes, yes. Thank you for
Thank
being
you for having us,
wonderful
Sharon.
guests, such wonderful guests you've been. Folks, I hope you take the information we provided today and use it to grow your global footprint, preferably in Africa. You can hear the show on Sirius XM Radio, channel 141 on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, as well as on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, and all of the streaming platforms. And hit me up at skindeepradioshow@gmail.com or check me out at Sharrarne_Morton on Instagram and Facebook. Thanks again for tuning in on all things that are skin deep.